On Sunday nights in the Crenshaw district, everyone knew where to go. You just followed the traffic. By about 9 p.m., cars would start lining up, and by midnight, Crenshaw would turn into a slow-moving car show people called the Shaw. Some saw it as a weekly tradition, but a lot of residents saw it as a weekly takeover. The crowds got so big that the city stepped in. In October 16, 1986, LA passed an anti-cruising ordinance where police could ticket you for driving past the same point more than 3 times in 2 hours. When that didn't slow things down, the city tightened the rules again in July 1988, limiting drivers to 1 round trip in a 6-hour window on problem streets. Even with the crackdowns, cruising stayed strong into the early 1990s. A Los Angeles Times story from October 25, 1992, described it as a long-running social ritual for young adults, with chill shops and regular hangout spots from Florence to Jefferson, like the Boys Market lot near Crenshaw and Rodeo, the Crenshaw Wall near 48th, and the area by Angela's Funeral Home near King. And while it looked like fun on the surface, the truth is it didn't always stay that way, so that's where the cases come in. On January 30th, 1985, Rodney Smith, also known as Snowman, was walking in rival territory belonging to the Van Ness Gangster Bloods near 46th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard. Rodney was from Harlem 30 Crip, and when he turned the corner on 46th Street, he came across Darius Harris and his friends. Rodney didn't say anything but, "Now what's up?" and fired 4 times from 25 to 30 feet away, hitting Harris above the left ankle and in the leg, which went through. He was able to get away from the scene and live to terrify another day. 2 days later, on February 1st, 1985, Rodney Snowman Smith was back on the street creeping through enemy territory, but this time on 48th Street and 9th Avenue. He spotted 3 men, Willie Rubin, Andre West, and Morris McIntosh, and stopped the car to fire at them. Before he drove off, no one was hit. The next day, one of those men weren't so lucky. February 2nd, 1985, Willie Rubin and Marvin McIntosh were outside a home on 9th Avenue when a car turned to come down their street with the headlights off. The car began to slow down as it got closer, so Willie thought it was suspicious and told Marvin to duck down behind a car in the driveway. The car drove past, then stopped. Rubin recognized Snowman as the driver. Shots came from the car and Rubin heard someone say "cuz" from inside the car. One of the shots hit Marvin McIntosh in the head. He sadly lost his life from that wound. After that, another witness, Ronnie Luke, said he had seen Snowman leave earlier that night with a man named Loco Doc. Ronnie later said Snowman came back alone and told him they had gone riding in the 50s hood and that they had just shot at some Bloods down on 9th Avenue. Luke also described Snowman saying Loco Doc yelled, "Harlem Crips rollin' 30s," before firing. The next morning, when the word got out that M-Bone, who is Marvin from VNG, was dead, Snowman basically said Loco Doc was going to be in trouble. In court, the judge acquitted Snowman of first-degree murder, but convicted him of second-degree murder, plus assault charges tied to the other shootings. The sentence on the murder was 31 years to life. On May 15, 2005, a little after 3 in the morning, Jamal and Timothy were from Rolling 60 Crip. They were out on Crenshaw hanging out where it was still active with about 20 to 30 people outside and talking in the parking lot at Chris Burger near Vernon Avenue. During the chill session, Jamal noticed a gray and white Chevy Tahoe came down Crenshaw Boulevard and slowly began circling the restaurant multiple times. Jamal picked up on this, and so did others in the crowd. He was ready to make a beeline for his vehicle and get out of the area. But before he could get there, shots rang out and Jamal was hit in the back of his leg, but he was able to make it inside his car to drive himself to the hospital. Timothy was standing next to Jamal when the shots went off, and as a result, he was struck in the neck, which later left him paralyzed. When officers arrived to the scene, Timothy was laying on the ground, bleeding from the neck. As one of the officers called for an ambulance and backup, he heard a car come to a screeching halt at the intersection. Several guys came out of the vehicle. One of the passengers was holding his neck that was bleeding. The man's name was Tremont Harrison. He ran toward the officer, attending to Timothy, before other men from the vehicle surrounded Tremont and started yelling, "This is 60s." He ended up collapsing right there on the ground. Other people in vehicles pulled up and stopped at the scene. An even bigger group crowded the area and began fighting one another. While things turned chaotic, Tremont ended up losing his life while the brawl was happening. Investigators recovered multiple shell casings in and around the Chris Burgers along Crenshaw Boulevard. It took detectives over 5 months to get a suspect in the case. A detective was able to tie the gun back to an Inglewood family blood named Hayes, who was involved in the shooting at Chris Burger that night. Hayes and his 3 friends, Dwayne, Anderson, and Michael, saw the shooting from different angles. It was Dwayne's birthday, and he planned to meet up with Hayes and Anderson to cruise down Crenshaw like they do every Saturday night and find food to eat for Dwayne's birthday. They were traveling in 3 separate cars, driving in a line on Crenshaw. Anderson in the front by himself. Behind him, Hayes riding passenger in a Chevy Blazer driven by Michael Roundtree, and behind them, Dwayne alone in his own car. As they came through the area near Chris Burger's at Crenshaw and Vernon, Anderson got separated at a light and ended up passing first. He saw a crowd on the right side and slowed down to wait for the other 2 to catch up. Then about 10 men stepped into the street in front of his car, throwing gang signs and yelling, "Hey, cuz, this is 60s." And Anderson saw at least 1 man with a gun. Anderson turned right and immediately called Dwayne, warning him not to drive by that intersection. Roundtree circled back looking for Anderson, with Dwayne following. Dwayne said there were 20 to 30 people outside Chris Burger's and that he already knew that spot sat in Crips territory and could be dangerous to stop at. Dwayne also noticed Hayes was wearing a red Cleveland Indians jacket. On the second pass through, Dwayne heard people yelling 60s and saw more gang signs. Traffic boxed them in, so they couldn't just speed away. Dwayne said 2 men ran to the side of the passenger where Hayes was sitting and started firing into the car. Dwayne heard other gunfire too, and a bullet hit the rear of the Blazer and flattened the rear passenger's tire. Dwayne said the first shooter firing 6 to 7 rounds, and then Hayes sticking his arm out the window and firing 6 or 7 shots back at him from only a few feet away. The first shooter kept firing and closed in, and the second shooter fired 4 or 5 shots with a Tech 9. It ended when the first shooter fell to the ground and the second shooter stopped firing. At trial, the bullet that hit Timothy could not be ruled out by experts that Hayes was the shooter of the 9mm gun based on blood trails. They also could not rule out which bullet hit Tremont or Jamal. In the end, the jury found Hayes guilty of the willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder of Tremont Harrison, premeditated attempted murders of Timothy Green and Jamal Wallace, on all 3 counts. He was ultimately sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, plus 100 years. On November 18th, 2007, Robert Jones and his friends were doing what a lot of people did on the Shaw back then, which was cruise with the rest of the traffic. It was after 2 a.m. when Robert pulled into the CVS parking lot on Crenshaw and Coliseum. He was linking up with his cousin R.B. and another small group of his friends, J.S., Valerie, M.S., and S.A., that were already there in a blue Toyota Camry. While the music played and people stood outside the cars talking, another car rolled in about 5 minutes later, showing up in multiple cars and parking a short distance away from Robert's group. One of those cars was a black Hummer. A few girls from the Hummer began to walk up to the group in and near the blue Camry and ask them, "Where y'all from?" The girls who walked up were wearing all red. Valerie, who was outside of the blue Camry, said, "What? This by yourself hustler Crip." And that's when the girls in red pulled MS, who was the only one in the Camry, out and started beating up her and Valerie. S.A. rushed in to help, but was beaten up also. Robert tried his best to break it up and protect S.A., but one of the girls in red slapped him, so he pushed her to the ground. After that, several men in the Hummer surrounded Robert and started packing him out. After Robert got off the ground, Kevin, the man who was driving the black Hummer, fired 3 shots at Robert with a handgun. Robert suffered a fatal wound to the neck as Kevin's group fled after the shooting. About 10 minutes later, Kevin was pulled over by police on 60th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard, and the handgun was recovered from the vehicle. Robert's friends told police everything that happened and was able to identify the shooter. Kevin Thompson was ultimately sentenced to 60 years to life for the murder of Robert Jones. That's the breakdown. If you were outside back then, you know exactly what time it was. I would ask you guys to please like, comment, and subscribe. So as always, watch your step and respect the streets.